Boone or the Truckashay. Moving on to leaders' questions under Standing Order 36.
A Hanishin Yikrijan and Tara Tihiakta go Cass Egandala and Gerkim Tihiakta, Kegawul Medu or Kisane, Medu or Costage Tihiakta or Price Tihiakta, Agus Medu or Yuchin at Ganjijan. Taoiseach, on Tuesday night, the Minister for Housing claimed that there wasn't a housing emergency. Now, I'm sure anybody who heard that remark would be aghast at the suggestion that we don't have a housing emergency in this country. Yet Micheál Martin thinks he's doing a great job, and Darragh O'Brien is the only Fianna Fáil minister that the Taoiseach has guaranteed is going to stay in his post despite repeatedly failing in that post. Rents are rising, house prices are rising, homelessness is at record levels. But the Taoiseach thinks Darragh is doing a blinder, playing a blinder. And this is the level, Taoiseach, of delusion that surrounds housing in your government. And it's not just me saying it. I want to share with you some of the stories from young people who've contacted us in recent days to illustrate to you the reality of the housing crisis and the impact that it's having on people's lives. One said, I'm living with my parents who are close to retirement age. Living at home in my mid-30s puts a strain on our relationship, puts a strain on my mental health. It seems for my entire life there has been a recession or a housing crisis in this country. Another person told us, I'm 32 years of age. I work as a clerical officer and have been saving for years with my boyfriend, and we can't afford these house prices that are so high. Another, I'm 29, my partner's 31. We're both in good full-time jobs and we've saved a €30,000 deposit for a house. We can't get a mortgage. We're now considering moving to Canada. Another said, I love my country and I wish I could stay. It's just sad I can't afford to stay in the country I was born in and raised in. And Taoiseach, these are just a sample of young people who've responded to our recent housing survey, and they're people who are living the reality of your government's shambolic approach to housing over more than a decade. They are real words. They're real people that are out there living in the real world, and unlike your Minister for Housing, who says that there is no housing emergency, or the Taoiseach who thinks he's playing a blinder. We see today an analysis carried out by the Irish Daily Mail that your government's housing targets are too low and pent-up demand will outstrip planned supply. But Sinn Féin have been telling you this for years. We've repeatedly brought forward proposals to deal with the emergency that we face. But you can't even meet the embarrassingly low targets that your government has set. Darragh O'Brien promised over 26,000 new build social homes by the end of 2022. So far, less than half of those have been delivered. We were promised 4,100 affordable homes by the end of this year. To date, only 925 affordable homes have been delivered. Taoiseach, this is why house prices are going through the roof. This is why rents are soaring. This is why homelessness are at an all-time high. Taoiseach, do you accept that there's a housing emergency? Do you agree with me that the so-called Housing for All plan isn't working? And will you commit to ensuring that a new plan is brought forward that actually gets to grips with the crisis in housing and is delivered in timeframes that are acceptable?
Thanks very much, Deputy. First of all, I agree that there is a housing emergency, and I've said so in the past, and I agree that there is a housing crisis, and I've used that terminology in the past. But competing with each other to find new and more dramatic words to describe the housing challenge doesn't build any houses, doesn't solve any problems for any of the people who you mentioned in your contribution. What we require is housing action, and that's exactly what we're doing, led by Minister O'Brien, implementing Housing for All, which is a good strategy, and a strategy which I believe is working. And just to give you a few reasons as to why I think that, we know this year we're going to exceed our targets for building new homes in Ireland. Roughly 28,000 new homes will be built in Ireland this year. And that's not numbers, that's 28,000 families living in a house this Christmas that did not exist last Christmas. It's not that long ago when only 4,000 or 5,000 houses in Ireland were being built every year. We've seen a dramatic increase in the number of new homes being built, but it's not enough, and we need to go further and go higher in the years to come. This year we'll provide more new social housing than any year in the history of the state. People often talk about all the homes that were built by councils and housing bodies in the 80s and 70s and 50s and even the 20s. There's not a year in the history of the state that we'll have built and provided more social housing than this year. And that, I believe, is a very significant achievement, but it's not enough. We need to do much more. When it comes to first-time buyers, and a lot of people don't know this, but this is really important. In the last 12 months, 15,000 first-time buyers, mostly couples, have bought their first home. That's the highest in 15 years. That is significant, but it's not enough, and we need to build on it and do even more. And when it comes to helping people with the cost of rent, which I agree is a real challenge for a lot of people, we're bringing in the rent tax credit, something I know you've advocated in the past, and that's going to be €1,000 for a single tax-paying renter, €2,000 for a tax-paying renting couple. The best part are more than a month's rent back in people's pockets for most people. Something you've called for, we're making happen, because it's what actions you do that matters, not the words that you use. In relation to the housing targets, you go back as long as a year and a half ago, I said that I thought we should aim to build 40,000 new units a year, and that is in the Housing for All plan. We want to ramp up as quickly as we can to 40,000 units a year. And we acknowledge that since those targets were set, the population has increased faster than we thought it would. We've welcomed 62,000 Ukrainians to Ireland. Many of them will stay, and more are going to arrive. And our economy is growing faster than anyone expected that it would. And we have new households being formed all the time, particularly smaller households. So yes, absolutely, we're going to review those housing targets with the view to increasing them next year. But let me be very clear about targets. We're going to exceed our new housing target this year. 20,000 new homes being built, 28,000 new homes being built. But we don't congratulate ourselves for exceeding a housing target. It's not that you meet your target, you tick the box and you think it's great. We need way more housing in Ireland. We probably have a deficit of 70 or 80,000 homes. If we could build them in the morning, if we could build them overnight, we would. There's no lack of money being put into this. There's no lack of political will when it comes to this. But we're dealing with real constraints. The availability of labour, the availability of materials, the availability of service sites. And no matter who's in government, they're going to have to deal with those real constraints. No lack of money, no lack of effort, no lack of care or compassion, no lack of political will, but real constraints that anyone has to deal with.
And Taoiseach, you've had 12 years to deal with those constraints. 12 full years. And now as we approach the end of 2022, what we see is that house prices have never been as high in the history of the state. Rents have never been as high. Homelessness, 4,000 children, never been as high in the history of the state. There are thousands of people who are out there who are contacting all of us who are locked out of home ownership. People who can't afford to get by. People who are seeing rents increase over and over and over again, and your government continue to refuse to bring in a rent freeze. So, Minister, is it not now time to accept that nearly 3 years in government that your plan is failing? Because house prices have gone up, rents have gone up, homelessness has gone up. Now, I don't know what measure you're using to measure success, but in my mind, that is failure. There's a whole generation locked out. There's a whole generation desperate. It is time to look at real delivery, to bring forward a plan that actually expedites the delivery of social and affordable and cost rental housing. And you're blatantly failing to meet the targets. I've made it clear less than half of the social housing that was promised by this government will be delivered this year. A quarter of affordable housing. This is failure on any scale, Minister. So is it not time now to stop defending a Minister and his failed plan and actually to come up with a better plan that actually delivers and listen to what we in the opposition have been putting forward?
Deputy, you're right about something. My party has been in office for the past 12 years. In fairness to Fianna Fáil and the Greens, they haven't been in office for so long, only 3 years. But there's no party in this House that's been in office on this island more than yours. You're 20 years in office, on and off, in Northern Ireland, with a Sinn Féin Finance Minister, a Sinn Féin Housing Minister, a Sinn Féin joint head of government, to use your own terms. And what's happening in Northern Ireland? House prices are going up, rents are going up. To use your own figures, 20,000 people are homeless. So if we failed, surely you've failed worse and for longer. What are your criteria for failure? Do you apply one standard for us and another standard to yourselves? Because that seems to be your metric and your approach to everything. One standard for the government and a different standard for your party. And that's true when it comes to ethics, it's true when it comes to your finances, both your personal finances, your party's finances and your policies.